As with any sport, Formula One can be as divisive as it is uniting. After Romain Grosjean's crash at Bahrain in 2020, the Formula One world came together in his support. Niki Lauda's return to racing just 6 weeks after being pulled from a fireball was hailed as one of the most incredible shows of human fortitude ever seen in racing history. These are just the highlights of moments that united the world of Formula One, but it's the most divisive moments that have us arguing hours on end. In today's video, we're going to look at the most divisive drivers in Formula One history. Hey motorheads, glad to see you back on this racing track. Did you get road rage and need the scenic view of Formula One updates to relax? Then we're ready to drive you. So put on your seatbelt and join us as we chauffeur you through today's video. But before that, be the perfect speed freak by banging into the subscribe button. Alright, we're good to go. Honourable mention, Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen had an incredibly divisive season in 2021. The season finale in Abu Dhabi has caused one of the biggest controversies in F1 history, which is saying something in a sport that loves drama as much as this one. Though the controversies wasn't his fault, somehow he ended up in the middle of it. He doesn't make the video officially, because his one season doesn't stack up to the career offenders that do feature on this list. He needs a few more years of getting fans riled up before he makes it here. Maybe the 2022 season will be the one that gets him among the most divisive drivers in F1 history. At number 10, Jacques Villeneuve. Jacques Villeneuve succeeded early on in his career, and then slowly fizzled out. But his follow-up career as a Formula One pundit really hasn't sat well with fans, given his colourful comments and outrageous takes on the state of the sport. While he speaks sensibly for the most part, occasionally, his hot takes seem completely unnecessary and made at others' expense. His infamous comment about Williams driver Robert Kubica, where he said, "It's not good for the sport if anyone with a disability can participate, at least not Formula One, perhaps in other classes," was heavily panned. That's clearly not deterred the Canadian though, as he continues expressing his opinions freely, earning him both fans and haters alike. Number 9 is Pastor Maldonado. You may have heard of Nikita Mazepin, but do you remember Crashtor Maldonado? In a sport that can sometimes lack drama and excitement, Maldonado was on a one-man mission to reverse F1's image. Out of 69 Grand Prix, there were 29 retirements, and he incurred 39 penalties in his colourful F1 career. That's one every 2.4 races. And 12 were for causing a collision. He always had a reputation as a pay-to-win driver. It was his cash of his sponsor PDVSA, a Venezuelan oil company, that got him an F1 seat. But Mark Webber gave the best insight into why he was so controversial. Asked in an interview who was the worst F1 driver, the Australian former Red Bull driver replied, "Probably Maldonado. He's out of his depth and just shouldn't be there. He was quite quick, unpredictable only insofar as you were never quite sure when the next embarrassing cock-up would happen. So wild he became a laughingstock, and fundamentally, not really good enough." Number 8 is Eddie Irvine. Eddie Irvine has courted controversy throughout his F1 career, but things got off to an inauspicious start after he incurred the wrath of Ayrton Senna and his millions of fans for unlapping himself from the race leader during his Grand Prix debut at Suzuka in 1993. A furious Senna sought out Irvine after the race in the Jordan motorhome, and after an argument, he knocked the Ulsterman off the table he was sitting on. Never frightened to speak his mind during and after his F1 career, Irvine appears an arrogant kind of fella in the minds of many fans. He still continues to court controversy, from calling Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso million-dollar babies on Virgin Media in 2007 to saying that Hamilton would murder Jenson Button during his first season at McLaren. Number 7, Nigel Mansell. There's no question that Nigel Mansell was one of the bravest and most exciting drivers of his generation. So much so that the Tifosi named him Il Leon, or the Lion. Yet, the biggest criticism that many F1 fans had of him was that he was, well, too boring. The hunched shoulders, dull monotone voice, and tendency to criticize his team when things were going poorly did not endear him to everyone. The Tifosi may have loved him, but his sheer beigeness meant most F1 fans couldn't stand to see him outside of his car. Number 6, Andrea de Cesaris. Such was Andrea de Cesaris' penchant for causing accidents that James Hunt called him an embarrassment to himself in a biography by Gerald Donison. De Cesaris gained such a reputation for causing accidents and ruining the races of others that he gained the nickname Andrea de Crasheris. Things eventually came to a head in 1985, when he was sacked by Liga after a massive accident at the Australian Grand Prix. Not disheartened, the Italian continued to prove a backfield menace for 9 more seasons, before retiring to the relief of fellow drivers and fans alike at the end of 1994. Number 5. Alain Prost. Ayrton Senna is one of the most loved F1 drivers of all time, so naturally, his arch rival was always going to get a place in this video. But Prost was unpopular in many circles due to his criticisms of his own team. After pushing Senna all the way in 1990, Prost was sacked before the final race of the 1991 season. He's quoted as being openly critical of the 1991 Ferrari and even referred to it as like a horrible truck to drive after what would be his final race for the team in Japan. He did everything he could to squeeze performance out of the 643, but Ferrari team director Claudio Lombardi said the sacking was down to other factors. His behavior during this season has not been at the level that Ferrari would like from a top driver. His behavior inside and outside the team meant that Ferrari had to stop the relationship. Incurring the wrath of the Tifosi is never a good idea. Number 4. Nelson Piquet. Number 4 on this list of lovable villains, Nelson Piquet was the embodiment of Latino fire. Not afraid to speak his mind, he disparagingly labelled fellow Brazilian Senna the Sao Paulo taxi driver, and also had his fair share of run-ins with Williams teammate Nigel Mansell. But perhaps the greatest example of Piquet's explosive temper came at the 1982 German Grand Prix, when he launched into Eliseo Salazar after colliding with the Chilean when leading the race. Number 3 is Lewis Hamilton. Few people expected Lewis Hamilton to make such an impact during his debut season in the sport, apart from the man himself, of course. Up against two-time world champion Fernando Alonso, Hamilton came within a whisker of winning the title in his first year in F1, during a season of infighting between the two drivers. Hatred towards the Englishman reached new lows when a minority of Spanish fans racially abused Hamilton and his family during a testing session at Barcelona the following season, and again in Brazil later in the year. Mindless bigotry aside, he's often been accused of arrogance. Nigel Mansell was quoted in 2011 as saying that Hamilton has an attitude problem, while Sir Jackie Stewart branded Hamilton as arrogant. Undoubtedly quick and unquestionably talented, Hamilton has mostly grown out of his controversies, but his early career should never be forgotten. Number 2 is Fernando Alonso. Sticking with the theme of arrogant F1 driver, only Fernando Alonso incites as much debate as Lewis Hamilton on many F1 forums. Perhaps you need an element of arrogance to be successful in any sport, and some might accuse Tiger Woods, Usain Bolt or Roger Federer of possessing a certain arrogant streak as well. As a double world champion, Alonso is perhaps entitled to a modicum of cocky self-assurance, but even Ferrari president Luca di Montemezzola felt the Spaniard needed to be put down a peg or two after publicly criticising the team after the Hungarian Grand Prix. I didn't like some attitudes, a few words, some outbursts, and I said so. I reminded everyone, including the drivers, that Ferrari comes before everything. The priority is the team. Michael Schumacher is one of Formula One's most successful drivers. So how is he also a villain of the sport? The answer lies in his questionable sportsmanship. Schumacher has undoubtedly contributed a lot to Formula One and has a huge fan base, but his inclination towards winning by any means possible has resulted in many controversies. Incidents that stand out in particular include his collision with Damon Hill during the 1994 championship decider at the Australian Grand Prix, his disqualification from the 1997 title race for trying the same thing with Jacques Villeneuve, and the unscheduled parking of his car at the end of the 2006 Monaco GP qualifying session in an effort to bring out the local yellow flag and prevent Fernando Alonso from bettering his lap time. These incidents blighted his otherwise impressive career, and to this day, many fans bring up these actions as parallels to Max Verstappen's aggressive racing style, and we all know how much of an argument those can create. That's all for today's video. Who on this list gets you most worked up? Or who would you defend in an argument no matter what? Let us know in the comments section down below what you think. And on your way out of our pit box, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and hit that notification bell to be sure you don't miss out on any of our content. Till we see you next time, drive safe and bye bye.